So let me ask you a question. If a key metric of, say, human vitality, something tied directly to our energy, our mood, our strength, and our ability to have a next generation.
I think I know where you're going with this.
Right. If that metric was shown to have dropped by over 50% in the last 50 years, wouldn't that be a global emergency?
It should be. Front page news everywhere.
Exactly. We talk nonstop about market crashes or climate shifts. But what if the most fundamental crisis is happening, quietly inside our own bodies?
Well, that's not a what-if scenario anymore. It's happening. We have profound, documented generational declines in the key biomarkers of male health. We're talking sperm counts and testosterone levels.
And this isn't a small dip.
No, not at all. This is a staggering drop. And what's really concerning is that it seems to be accelerating. It's this quiet crisis that almost no one is talking about. But the data, the hard data, is screaming at us to pay attention.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we are unpacking one of the most critical, unspoken rules of modern life, that our relentless 247 pursuit of convenience. It's actively dismantling our hormonal and reproductive potential.
And we're diving deep into these hidden factors, things in our environment and our lifestyle that are so pervasive, they're literally changing our biology from the inside out.
And it's affecting everyone, right? Men, women, all across the planet.
That's right. Our mission today is to take this huge, overwhelming problem and just break it down into actionable knowledge. We've pulled together some really powerful sources.
What are we working with?
We've got cutting-edge clinical reviews, massive meta-analyses that track these trends over decades, and some really granular toxicology research that details exactly how these chemicals are messing with us.
So we're going to dissect the numbers, the sheer scale of this decline. We'll map out the biology that's under attack, this incredibly delicate HBG axis. And then we're going to name names.
We're going to expose the chemical disruptors, the phthalates, the bisphenols, pesticides, heavy metals, the stuff hiding in plain sight.
But most importantly, and this is the whole point, we're going to spend a lot of time on the practical, potent levers you can pull, starting today, to fight back and stabilize your own vitality.
It's time to face the data. Let's get into it.
Okay, so that first huge alarm bell, it really went off globally in 2017 with that landmark meta-analysis on sperm count, right?
Yeah.
Before we get into the crazy numbers, why was that study so important?
Well, it wasn't just a single study in one lab. This was a mammoth undertaking, a systematic review and meta-analysis that pulled data from 185 separate studies.
Wow.
Yeah, covering over 42,000 men globally between 1973 and 2011. It's the sheer volume that gave it so much authority. It could actually speak to population-level trends, not just, a blip in one lab's results.
So it had real weight. And what did that initial 2017 analysis, which was focused on what they called Western countries, what did it find?
The findings were, to put it mildly, catastrophic. So the focus was on North America, Europe, Australia, and New Zealand.
Right.
And among men who weren't selected for fertility issues, so just the general population, the average sperm concentration declined by about 1.4% per year.
1.4% per year. That sounds small, but I have a feeling it adds up.
It adds up in a terrifying way. When you track that cumulative decline over the 4 decades the study covered, it comes out to a total drop of 52.4%.
Over half. In just 40 years.
More than half. Let's just put that in real numbers. The average concentration dropped from around 99 million sperm per milliliter in 1973 all the way down to just 47 million by 2011.
And that 47 million number, that's getting pretty close to the clinical line for fertility issues, isn't it?
It is. We're talking about falling below that 50 million threshold that was historically seen as a sign of robust fertility. And it gets worse. The total sperm count, which also accounts for semen volume, that dropped even more, by a truly shocking 59.3%.
Almost 60%.
Right. And the scientific community saw this as the canary in the coal mine. A clear signal that something pervasive in our environment and lifestyle was creating a massive reproductive health crisis.
Okay, so that data was alarming enough, but then the 2023 update didn't just confirm it, it basically escalated the whole thing.
It escalated it dramatically. This new review was even bigger, 223 studies from 53 countries.
So what were the big takeaways from that one?
So it solidified the previous findings. The global decline now stands at about 51.6% over 45 years. So very similar number. But the critical update was twofold.
Okay.
First, the decline is no longer limited to the West. This was the first time we saw significant downward trends in places like Asia, Africa, and Latin America.
It's officially a global problem now.
It's a global problem. It confirmed that this assault is affecting the entire human species, regardless of geography. It's not just about, a Western lifestyle anymore.
That is a huge finding.
Yeah.
But you said twofold. What was the second part? Because I've heard that this is the truly terrifying part of the update.
It is. It's the acceleration factor. When the researchers isolated the data just from the year 2000 onward, the rate of decline in sperm counts essentially doubled. Doubled. The yearly decline rate since 2000 has jumped to 2.64% per year. For comparison, it was about 1.16% per year before 2000.
Let's just sit with that for a second.
Yeah.
The problem is getting worse, faster. What's the hypothesis there? Why is it accelerating so dramatically in the 21st century?
It suggests two critical things are happening at once. First is the cumulative chemical burden. A lot of these endocrine-disrupting chemicals, or EDCs, are persistent. They build up.
In our bodies and in the environment.
Exactly. So the total lifetime load of these chemicals in the average person is just growing exponentially. And second, and this is just as important, is the metabolic collapse.
You mean the global rise in obesity, insulin resistance?
All of it. The rapid spread of obesity and the sedentary lifestyle since 2000. We're going to get into this later, but body fat isn't just passive storage. It's an active hormonal organ, and it absolutely sabotages testosterone.
So it's a perfect storm. More chemicals from the outside, and our bodies are becoming less resilient on the inside.
That's the theory. The combination of increased chemical exposure and worsening metabolic health seems to be what's driving this catastrophic acceleration.
And it's not just sperm count. We're seeing a parallel, quieter decline in the primary male sex hormone itself, in testosterone. And this is happening separate from just normal aging.
Absolutely. The foundational work on this came from the Massachusetts Male Aging Study, the MMAS. They looked at serum testosterone levels over a long period and found really strong evidence of a T decline of more than 1% per year.
1% per year, from the late 80s through the early 2000s.
Correct. And what makes this finding so powerful is how thorough they were. They controlled for all the usual suspects.
What do you mean?
I mean, they controlled for all the things that we know can lower T age, chronic illness, body mass index or BMI, smoking, employment, even marital status.
Okay, wait, let me just push back on that for a second. That's huge. If they controlled for age and they controlled for obesity, which are the two big things we always blame for low T,
right,
and the generational decline was still there, doesn't that basically mean we don't know the full cause?
Yeah.
That something external is driving this?
Precisely. That is precisely the point. It's an admission that this decline is tied to something in the modern environment that's affecting an entire generation equally, no matter their individual health choices.
It points the finger squarely at these universal modern factors.
It really does. The unseen crisis of endocrine disruptors, chronic low-grade inflammation, all the things we're about to unpack.
And this brings us to a really practical point for anyone listening who's trying to get a handle on their own health. Let's say you have all the classic symptoms of low T, low energy, bad mood, no libido, losing muscle.
Right.
But your doctor runs a test and says your total T is normal. Maybe it's in the 500s. How that number was measured can change the entire story. This is the low T diagnosis trap.
It's the most common pitfall. The method used to get that number matters profoundly. Most primary care offices, big commercial labs, they rely on the immunoassay method.
Why?
Because it's fast and it's cheap, so it's the default. But testosterone is a small steroid molecule, and it looks chemically similar to a lot of other hormones in your system. And immunoassays, well, they're known to be less specific. They suffer from something called cross-reactivity.
Cross-reactivity. Can you simplify what that means for us?
Yeah, think of the immunoassay like a simple, broad filter. It's looking for a specific shape, the testosterone molecule, but it's looking for it in this complex chemical soup. And because other steroids have similar shapes, the filter sometimes mistakenly counts them as testosterone. It artificially inflates the result.
So it's not a very accurate count.
It's not. And this interference is a huge problem at lower concentrations or in women or kids where T levels are naturally low. So that immunoassay might give you a misleading normal number, leaving you with all the symptoms but no answers.
So if the immunoassay is this broad filter that gets confused, what's the gold standard? What's the better method we should be asking for?
The superior method, hands down, is liquid chromatography tandem mass spectrometry, or LC-MS.
That's a mouthful.
It is, but the process is far more sophisticated. Think of it this way. LC-MS is like a specialized chemical detective that physically separates the testosterone molecule from everything else before it gets measured.
So it isolates the target first.
Exactly. It uses liquid chromatography to isolate the molecule, and then mass spectrometry to confirm its exact chemical signature. It's a two-step verification that ensures a precise and accurate measurement.
So it's like a forensic analysis versus just a quick snapshot.
That's a perfect way to put it. It ensures you're not confusing T with its hormonal cousins, which is why it's so critical if you're symptomatic and getting these confusing normal results from a standard lab.
So before we get into how our hormones are being attacked, let's do a quick testosterone 101. What exactly is it, and what's the factory that makes it?
Okay, so testosterone, or T, is the principal male sex hormone, though it's absolutely crucial for female health as well. Its production is mostly handled by specialized cells called Leydig cells, which are in the testes.
And its production is tightly controlled, right? It's not just on all the time.
Very tightly controlled by a sophisticated three-tiered communication loop called the hypothalamic pituitary gonadal axis, the HPG axis.
Describe that communication chain. It sounds like a command structure in the military or something.
It's a very delicate feedback loop, constantly being monitored. It starts in the brain. The hypothalamus releases a hormone called GnRH. That hormone travels down to the pituitary gland, which then releases luteinizing hormone, or LH. LH is the signal that travels to the Leydig cells and tells them, okay, time to make T from cholesterol.
And then the T that's produced talks back to the brain.
Exactly. The T provides negative feedback to both the hypothalamus and the pituitary. It basically says, hey, we've got enough down here, you can slow down production now. It keeps the whole system in a state of balance, or homeostasis.
And its effects on the body are just, they're everywhere. It's the foundation for physical strength, bone density.
It's absolutely foundational. T is what we call an anabolic hormone. It builds things up, and it's also anti-catabolic. It prevents tissue breakdown.
So it builds muscle, maintains bone.
Right. It stimulates protein synthesis for muscle mass. It maintains bone density. It lowers the voice, shapes hair patterns, and of course, it's directly responsible for regulating libido. It's the core fuel for physical and mental vitality.
Now, a mistake a lot of people make is thinking their hormones are just at one level all day. But T operates on a really precise daily clock. Let's talk about the link between T and sleep.
Yes, T secretion follows a very distinct circadian rhythm. This means that T concentration naturally peaks in the early morning, and then it declines through the day into the evening.
And this morning peak, it's not a guarantee. It's earned through good sleep.
Precisely. This increase is profoundly sleep-dependent. You need at least 3 hours of normal sleep architecture to get it.
What do you mean by sleep architecture?
Cycling through those deep REM and non-REM stages. If your sleep is constantly broken up, from sleep apnea, shift work, or just staying up late staring at screens, that crucial nocturnal T rhythm gets completely disrupted.
So bad sleep is basically T suppression.
Chronic poor sleep is chronic T suppression. It doesn't matter how well you eat or how much you exercise. If the sleep isn't there, the T won't be either.
Now, when we get that total T number back from the lab, most of that hormone isn't actually available for our body to use, is it? We have to understand this idea of bioavailability.
This is maybe the single most crucial distinction to understand. When T is in your blood, most of it is bound to proteins. The main one is called sex hormone binding globulin, or SHBG.
And if T is bound to SHBG, it's locked up.
It's pretty much unavailable for your tissues to use. The bond is too strong. Only a tiny fraction, maybe 0.5% to 2% of your total T is in the free fraction. That's the stuff that's biologically active.
So we have total T and we have free T. But there's a third category that many experts think is a better measurement.
Yes, and that's bioavailable T, or BT. This is the sum of your free T plus the T that's weakly bound to another protein called albumin.
And why is that included?
Because the bond between T and albumin is weak. It's more like a handshake than a handcuff, so that T can easily break free in the capillaries and become available to the tissues.
So if total T is all the money in your bank account, the SHBG bound stuff is locked in a long-term CD you can't touch.
Right.
And the bioavailable T is the cash in your wallet, plus what's in your checking account. It's what you can actually spend.
That is a perfect analogy. That's why many clinicians argue that bioavailable T is a much better biomarker of how you actually feel and function than just the total T number alone.
Okay, finally, before we move on, we need to talk about one central chemical reaction that becomes the target for almost every disruptor we're about to discuss. The conversion of T to estradiol.
Right. Testosterone isn't always the final product. T and its precursor, androstenedione, are also the raw materials used to make the female sex hormones, mainly estradiol.
And this conversion is handled by a specific enzyme.
A very important one called aromatase. This single enzymatic step is absolutely central to the whole hormonal health puzzle. As we're about to see, anything that ramps up aromatase activity, whether it's a chemical or, critically, more body fat, will actively skew your hormonal balance, pushing you away from vitality.
Okay, now we get to the heart of the problem. The unseen enemy. The endocrine-disrupting chemicals, or EDCs.
These aren't like traditional poisons, they're exogenous agents. They come from outside the body. And their job is simple: to interfere with your natural hormone pathways.
At any point in the process.
At any point. Synthesis, secretion, action, elimination, they can scramble the signals anywhere along the line. And the male reproductive system is just uniquely vulnerable because producing T and sperm is so tightly regulated.
And we are exposed to these things constantly.
It's virtually unavoidable. The main source globally is actually our diet, but we also get them through skin absorption, inhalation, from industrial products, even the dust in our homes.
Let's start with one of the most common groups, phthalates. These are the chemicals that make plastics soft and flexible, right?
Exactly. Think soft vinyl, shower curtains, food wrap. They're also used to carry that mystery ingredient fragrance in almost all personal care products.
And the evidence shows they're everywhere.
The CDC found them in literally everybody they tested in the US, including pregnant women. And that's where the real danger lies. It's not just about adult exposure, it's what happens during a critical window in fetal development.
This is the phthalate syndrome.
Right. Toxicological experiments in rodents found these repeatable, startling effects. When a mother was exposed during that critical early period, it specifically affected the male offspring.
In what way?
It led to incomplete masculinization, genital abnormalities. And it happens because a specific phthalate metabolite, MEHP, acts directly on the developing Leydig cells, the T-producing factories.
And this is where the source material gets technical, but it's so important. It says MEHP paralyzes the rate-limiting step of steroidogenesis. What does that mean in simple terms?
Okay, so making testosterone starts with cholesterol. The very first, most critical speed-controlling step is getting that cholesterol into the inner part of the Leydig cell's mitochondria. If you block that first step,
The whole factory shuts down.
the entire assembly line comes to a screeching halt, and that's what MEHP does. It specifically targets and paralyzes that rate-limiting step. So phthalates don't just mimic hormones, they literally halt the T factory from even starting during the most important window of development.
That's terrifying. The damage is done before we're even born. Okay, let's move to bisphenols, with BPA being the most infamous one, found in food packaging, can linings.
Household items everywhere. And they launch another major assault on the Leydig cells. BPA has been shown to decrease testosterone production, reduce the viability and growth of the cells, and harm the mitochondria inside them.
And the potency is just off the charts, isn't it?
It's shocking. In one study, a very, very low dose, 0.01 nanomolar, was enough to alter testosterone production by 25%.
Wait, 0.01 nanomolar. Let's put that in perspective. That's like a tiny pinch of salt dissolved in an Olympic-sized swimming pool.
Exactly. That minuscule amount cut T production by a quarter. That fact alone should fundamentally change how we look at every plastic water bottle and every piece of food packaging.
And it's another two-pronged attack, isn't it? It doesn't just stop T production.
No, it doubles down. It also manipulates that aromatase enzyme we talked about. BPA has been shown to increase aromatase mRNA levels.
So it tells the body to make more of the enzyme that converts T into estrogen.
Precisely. So you get less T being made in the first place, and then what little T you do make gets converted into estradiol at a faster rate. It's a massive hormonal imbalance that pushes you toward estrogen dominance.
And then there are pesticides, the stuff designed for, well, the elimination of unwanted life. Let's focus on atrazine first, which is incredibly common in our water because of agricultural runoff.
Atrazine is a huge environmental contaminant. One study found it in 74% of agricultural wells they tested, so it's all over our groundwater. And its danger is, again, in that conversion loop.
It messes with the T to E2 balance.
It's a powerful disruptor of it. Lab studies have shown that atrazine increases human aromatase activity, massively skewing that ratio. And in farm couples with high exposure, it's been linked to an increased risk of preterm delivery.
And some of these pesticides go beyond reproductive harm. They have direct neurological consequences.
Yes, specifically the organophosphates and carbamates. These are potent neurotoxic agents. They work by preventing the breakdown of a key neurotransmitter, acetylcholine.
So the signal never stops firing.
Right. It leads to massive overstimulation, which can cause symptoms like paralysis. And this huge amount of oxidative damage and signaling chaos is strongly implicated in neurodegenerative conditions like Parkinson's and Alzheimer's.
The source was very specific about the link to Parkinson's.
It was. A specific pesticide called rotenone has been linked directly to the initiation of Parkinson's disease because of how it harms the mitochondria in our cells. It's a clear demonstration that these environmental toxins are impacting both our hormonal and our neurological future.
And finally, the original environmental bad guys. Heavy metals. Mercury, lead, cadmium, arsenic. How do they do their damage?
They all induce toxicity through similar pathways, primarily by generating what are called reactive oxygen species, or ROS. This creates profound oxidative stress.
Which is like cellular rust.
A perfect way to describe it. It causes enzyme inactivation, DNA damage, genomic instability. They are basically cellular wrecking balls.
And the data shows that males seem to be more vulnerable to some of these, especially lead.
That's a critical finding. Studies show males tend to have higher body burdens of lead, and they seem to be more susceptible to its neurotoxic effects. Things like developmental delays and attention deficits.
And this isn't just because they might be exposed more.
No, what's startling is that males can show behavioral deficits at lead doses that leave females completely unaffected. This suggests there's a real biological mechanism at play, making them more vulnerable.
Okay, so it's easy to just blame the chemical industry, but the source material was clear that we're also attacking our own systems from the inside, through stress, overtraining, and food. Let's talk about overtraining syndrome.
Right. Overtraining syndrome, or OTS, is a serious issue for dedicated athletes. For a while, people thought it was all about having chronically high cortisol, the stress hormone.
But that wasn't the full picture.
No, it was deemed insufficient for a diagnosis. But researchers found a much more sensitive indicator. A newer finding showed that OTS specifically reduces the testosterone to estradiol ratio, the TE2 ratio.
So it zeroes in on that single aromatase conversion step.
Exactly. And because that step is so immediate, the TE2 ratio acts as this rapid, real-time marker of the body's balance between anabolism building up and catabolism breaking down. If that ratio drops, it's a clear signal that the breakdown processes are winning.
And it's not just from too much exercise.
No, and this is key. OTS can be triggered independently just by eating patterns. If an athlete is severely underfueling in a chronic calorie deficit, that stress signal alone can cause the TE2 ratio to plummet.
That leads us right into this devastating loop. Cortisol, body fat, and estrogen.
Yeah.
How does this cycle work?
Okay, so cortisol, our main stress hormone, does more than just help us in emergencies. It actively promotes fat deposition, especially that dangerous visceral fat around our organs.
A survival mechanism to store energy during stressful times.
Right, but here's the problem. Fat tissue is the primary, most metabolically active site of the aromatase enzyme.
The TDE2 converter.
The TDE2 converter. So the more fat you have, especially visceral fat, the more aromatase activity you have.
So high stress leads to more fat, which leads to more conversion of your precious testosterone into estrogen.
It's a self-perpetuating negative feedback loop. It just accelerates the draining of your T pool. And what's interesting is that T and cortisol aren't always enemies. There's a complex positive coupling between them. People with higher average T also tend to have higher average cortisol. It shows how interlinked our stress and sex hormone systems really are.
And speaking of diet, let's talk about ultra-processed foods, UPFs,
Yeah.
the fast food, the junk food. What do they do to our key metabolic markers?
High UPF intake is a hormonal disaster. It's positively associated with CRP, C-reactive protein, which is the gold standard marker for chronic systemic inflammation.
And it's negatively associated with the good stuff.
Right. Negatively associated with two crucial hormones, IGF-1, which is for growth and repair, and SHBG, that key protein that binds to testosterone.
So a whole food diet shows the exact opposite pattern, I assume.
Precisely. People eating minimally processed foods have significantly lower inflammation and higher, more robust levels of SHBG and IGF-1. The problem with UPFs comes directly from the metabolic chaos caused by all the sugar and refined carbs.
And how does that high sugar intake sabotage the system?
Well, high sugar can directly blunt the release of GnRH from the hypothalamus. Remember, GnRH is what kicks off the entire HPG axis. By blunting its release, the brain is effectively cutting the communication line to the testes.
So it's like headquarters telling the factory to shut down.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And then the resulting high insulin levels cause another long-term problem with SHBG.
What's that?
High insulin tells the liver to produce less SHBG. Now, you might think that's good because it frees up T, but in the long run, it's a catastrophe. Because SHBG acts like a reservoir, it holds T in circulation and extends its life. If you have less SHBG, the clearance rate of T from your blood speeds up. You're basically draining the whole pool faster than you can fill it.
So the unspoken rule here is that our modern environment is just crushing our hormones. But the flip side is that if the causes are controllable, so is the solution. We have levers we can pull.
We have powerful levers. And the cornerstone is physical activity and weight loss.
Let's start with weight loss. Why is that non-negotiable?
Because obesity, especially that visceral fat, is an aromatase factory. It's aggressively converting your T to estrogen. So gradual, sustainable weight loss leads to significant documented improvements in T levels, period.
In terms of exercise, there's a hierarchy, right? Some things work better than others.
Absolutely. Strength training and high-intensity interval training, or HIIT, are at the top. The real focus should be on big, compound movements.
The squats, deadlifts, bench press. Why are those so much better than, say, isolation exercises?
Because they engage multiple large muscle groups at the same time. When you do a heavy deadlift, you're sending a massive systemic signal to your entire body that it needs to grow and repair on a huge scale. That signal is what triggers the greatest hormonal response, the biggest release of testosterone and growth factors.
And this might be the most surprising finding for some people. The idea that movement is actually a more powerful lever than just eating less.
The data really supports that. Studies suggest increased physical activity has a greater effect on raising testosterone than just reducing your calorie intake alone. You have to move.
It's like we've engineered movement out of our lives.
But we have. Occupational energy expenditure in the US has dropped by over 100 calories a day since 1960. And that reduction almost perfectly matches the increase in average body weight over the same period. We've automated ourselves into poor health.
Okay, beyond movement, micronutrients. There's a T trio that comes up again and again. Let's start with vitamin D.
Vitamin D is essential. It's really a prohormone. And critically, there are vitamin D receptors right on the Leydig cells where T is made. This means it has a direct role in the manufacturing process.
And a deficiency is directly linked to lower T.
Directly. Men with vitamin D deficiency have significantly lower total T and SHBG. And we have clinical trials to back up supplementation. One trial gave men about 3,300 IUs of vitamin D daily for a year.
And what happened?
They saw significant increases in both their total and free T levels compared to the placebo group. It's also linked to better spur parameters and even erectile function, sometimes independent of its effects on T. It's a pillar of vitality.
And the other two in the trio?
Zinc and magnesium. They are absolutely essential cofactors for T production. Zinc is required for enzymes all along the HPG axis. A deficiency can impair the whole communication line.
And magnesium?
Magnesium is critical for energy and muscle function, and it also seems to help keep free T levels optimal by competing for binding sites on SHBG. Fixing deficiencies in these 3D, zinc, and magnesium is often the low-hanging fruit for improving hormonal health.
What about natural botanicals? Are there any adaptogens that are proven to help?
Yes, we have good clinical evidence for things like ashwagandha and shilajit. Taken regularly, they can naturally increase T levels by around 15 to 20%.
How do they work?
Mainly by reducing cortisol, that stress hormone, which lowers the catabolic state. But they also seem to directly stimulate the Leydig cells, helping the body's own production. They help restore the balance that modern life has thrown off.
Now, what about some of the newer metabolic drugs, like the GLP-1 agonists?
Those are interesting. They obviously help by causing weight loss, which reduces aromatase, but they also directly improve insulin sensitivity. By reducing that insulin burden, they help the liver produce more SHBG, which, as we discussed, protects the total T pool.
Okay, now for the hardest part, the practical evasion plan. How do we actually avoid these chemical disruptors when they're hidden in everything?
Avoidance is the most powerful intervention. But since total avoidance is almost impossible, we have to be smart. There are 4 actionable, evidence-based steps that can massively reduce your exposure.
What's number 1?
Choose organic food whenever possible. Studies have shown that switching to an organic diet can drastically reduce your pesticide exposure, sometimes literally overnight.
Number 2?
Avoid plastics in food and drink storage. Never, ever heat food in plastic. Use glass or stainless steel. Pay attention to recycling codes. Avoid 3, 6, and 7.
3.
Avoid canned foods and beverages. The epoxy linings of most cans contain bisphenols that leach into the food, especially if it's acidic. Choose fresh or frozen instead.
And what's the last one? This one people often forget.
Remove dust from your home. EDCs, like flame retardants, are heavy. They don't float in the air. They settle in your household dust. When you vacuum, especially with a HEPA filter, you are physically removing a major reservoir of these chemical toxins from your living space.
So after all of this, what does it all mean? The final unspoken rule of this deep dive seems to be that this crisis isn't inevitable. It's a direct consequence of the environment we've built.
It's a direct, logical, and importantly, reversible consequence of the chemical, sedentary, hyper-stressed world we've created. And the implications go way beyond just one person's health.
You mean it's transgenerational?
It is profoundly transgenerational. Animal studies have shown that the children of an exposed generation can have a 45% reduction in sperm count and a 38% drop in testosterone.
But it doesn't stop there, does it? That's the finding that should keep everyone up at night.
It doesn't. The F2 generation, the grandchildren, still show persistent abnormalities, not from their own exposure, but because of epigenetic changes. The actual molecular instructions for healthy reproduction have been altered and passed down.
So the choices you're making today about your food, your water bottle, your exercise, they're not just about you, they're creating a legacy of health, or a lack of it, for your descendants.
Exactly. We've outsourced too much of our health, our food prep, our movement, our hormone regulation to systems designed for convenience, not for longevity.
So the true mastery of life isn't about acquiring more stuff, but about intelligently avoiding the things that take the most away from you.
The greatest metric of success isn't what you accumulate, it's the legacy of health you leave behind.
So the final unspoken rule of mastery is that after you uncover a truth like this, you can't just observe it. You have to make a commitment to change it.
You have to act.
So join the community. If you found a clear lever to pull in your own health journey today, do 2 things for us. First, leave a like. That's the signal to the algorithm that this knowledge is too important to keep secret.
Help us get it out there.
And second, ring that notification bell and subscribe. That's your commitment to keep uncovering these hidden truths that govern vitality and mastery. And finally, tell us in the comments, which of these hidden disruptors, the shocking potency of BPA, the atrazine in our water, the phthalates, which one surprised you the most? Share your plan. Go master your life.